Also, tram lines and silt traps have been created to hold equipment and to better clean up the affected waterway. The Social Development Program, which is in line with Philex Mining's commitment to social and environmental policy, would be the social aspect of the ecosystems approach that the company is eyeing for its cleanup and rehabilitation drive on Balog Creek. Earlier, we have also announced that we are planning to implement various measures on the ecosystems approach under the program called Integrated River Basin Management, or IRBM, focusing on aquatic, terrestrial, water resources management with regard to the cleanup and reforestation or restoration of the Balog Creek. Some aspects of the short-term plan for the social and economic development of the affected areas involve also identifying the affected households and putting in place the participation of other stakeholders in the process, while those in the medium plan includes sustaining this partnership as well as capability building trainings for livelihood programs. The long-term plan, on the other hand, emphasizes, among other things, the capacity building for the maintenance of the restored ecosystem, and in preparation for this, for making this a place where people may also engage in leisure activities such as hiking, biking, all upon mine closure. Ladies and gentlemen, worse than a fire, tornado, or a terrorist attack, the loss of reputation can literally kill an organization. Philex, with a reputation that has been built over the last 54 years, will keep on meeting the challenges and the work through the obstacles that come along. Our vision is to be a world-class natural resource company. That, in itself, is a reason to demonstrate our commitment to being a good corporate citizen and being a responsible mining corporation. Let me assure everyone this afternoon, on behalf of our chairman, the board of directors, the officers, the men and women toiling in Philex now, let us assure you that Philex will rise from this accident bigger, stronger, and better. Magandang hapon po sa inyo lahat. Good afternoon to everyone.
Thank you very much, Mike. When we invited Philex to speak before us at one of our every other month luncheons, we didn't realize that we would actually be giving you an opportunity to speak on this unfortunate accident that happened sometime in between our invitation and your speech today. So you've just talked about and demonstrated to us that even the best and the most responsible of mining companies could experience what you experienced in Padcal. And I think this is a lesson to many here, many of us who are also responsible mining companies, about what nature could bring to you and what you really need to do to remediate whatever issues arise from these unfortunate disasters. I'm now going to open the floor to questions. We have about 10 minutes, and what I'd like to do is encourage you, please, to stand up, come to a microphone, give us your name and your affiliation before you ask your question. So Mike will be here for your questions. And I have any question on the floor right now? None? Well, let me start. Mike, I've talked to people out there, and there seems to be a confusion about Philex's refusal to pay the fine that's being imposed by the MGB, and Philex's undertaking, as you've expressed now, to repair the damage, your commitment to assist, in your own words here, respond to the needs of the community, rehabilitation, reforestation, and cleanup. It seems that there's an impression out there when Philex makes a statement that it does not want to pay the fines, that it wants to walk away from this responsibility. But what I'm hearing from you is very different. So could you please explain to us what exactly that position is?
Thank you very much, Leo, for giving me that opportunity, or giving us that opportunity. First of all, when we received the letter from the MGB about, I believe, last week, we read in that letter the following. First, they made a finding that Philex had in its practice a standard operating procedure, a standard job procedure, or protocols when it comes to the maintenance and operation of the tailings pond. Number two, they made a categorical finding that Philex officials or those in charge of maintaining the integrity or maintenance of the pond were not remiss in their obligations in following the standard operating procedures protocols. Ergo, they made a finding that there was no liability or negligence on the part of Philex. Therefore, it goes against the grain of fines or penalties. Payment of penalties or fines would mean an acceptance of liability or negligence on the part of Philex. There was none. And it is not just us speaking or telling the public or telling the government that there was no negligence, but it is already the monitoring group, the team, the task force, tasked to conduct an investigation which lasted for more than a month. It was a very in-depth investigation. Masuring investigasyon po ang ginawa ng mga taga-MGB at nakita nila na walang pakasala po ang Philex. That's why it would be incongruous for us to pay the fines. However, let me reiterate and let me repeat. As far as remedial measures are concerned, as far as payment, for example, for those who were affected by this unfortunate accident, Philex has the capacity, the capability, and the willingness to face their obligations and commitments under the law. And that stands.
Thank you, Mike. So it's good to hear that instead of paying $1 billion to the government, you've actually set aside, we don't know how much, but up to how much it will take to clean it up and to remediate the problems around the communities. So, any other questions of Philex or Mike from the floor? Yes, Peter.
I'll just make a comment, Mike. My wife grew up in Baguio, went to St. Teresa's College, which is an exclusive school up there, and every morning a bus would come in from Philex with girls for the school and a bus from Benguet with girls for the school. There was no bus from anywhere else, only the two mining companies, which shows the good that mining was doing in those communities. If I remember rightly, you said, and I've read, that this spill, there was no toxic effects. So what's this fine all about? If it's not caused any deaths, not caused any accidents, not caused any toxic destruction of the river, and you're going to rehabilitate the people that were affected, what on earth is this government talking about?
As they've cited, of course, provisions of the Mining Act, which provides for the payment of certain fines for something like 50 pesos per metric ton that is supposed to be discharged. But again, let me say that this was caused by force majeure. And although there has been some initial statements from the MGB that the provisions, or rather the concept or doctrine of force majeure does not apply, of course, we strongly disagree. But of course, we'll be submitting our reply or comment to the letter of the MGB very soon. And I'm sure that the media will definitely cover that.
Is this on? Yes. Hello. Steve Hill from Philippine Resources magazine. In your presentation, you indicated that the needle is moving in terms of public opinion, both as to the economic benefits and the dangers of mining. Could you suggest why you think that is happening, which battles are being won, and which battles are still to be won?
Well, as I mentioned earlier, the fact that mining companies now, especially Philex, have decided to go toe-to-toe with those who are trying to disinform our population, our citizens, about the benefits of mining, Because for the longest time, most mining companies would rather keep quiet about it. But for the longest time, those in the anti-mining position, so to speak, they have been very vocal, vociferous in their disinformation campaign. And we just had to put a stop to that. So my opinion, in our opinion, and on the basis of the surveys that were recently conducted, and I think a survey should be due anytime soon, especially after that mining forum, wherein no less than MVP spoke in that very, shall we say, colorful exchange. It brought to the fore, to a lot of people, what the mining issue was all about. For the longest time, if you ask anyone, especially the youth, who by the way comprises about 60% of our demographics, that's why the target of our information campaign, especially it should be the campaign of the industry or the chamber, is to target the 60% demographic, which is the youth. We're talking about people 22 or 23 years and below. If you ask them then, they would always say, mining, the automatic reaction would have been, it destroys the environment. That's usually the case. They would hardly talk about the benefits of mining. So the fact that that forum happened, it raised, at least, the first thing, it raised awareness. Now they are more willing to listen to both sides. Whereas there was a time that they were inundated by false information, or at least just one side of the story. Now they're able to access the other side of the story. And we strongly believe that if we continue to do so, if we continue to provide the right information, telling them about what mining can do if done responsibly, then I think that the battle, though difficult, we can slowly win this battle.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Albert Garcia, the chairman of Philippine Australia Business Council. I also happen to be a shareholder of Philex. The market is obviously penalizing you. And obviously what you just said I would have assumed would have offset any negativities as far as the market's concerned. What is Philex doing about the downtrend in your market prices?
Well, to answer your question, Albert, well, as I mentioned earlier, we have been very transparent and very engaging. All queries with respect to what has happened in our mining site in Padcal, we have been very honest and forward in answering all issues and all questions. With respect to the issues on the EO and the IRR, we already also mentioned clearly what our stand is. So while admittedly, of course, certain admissions somehow dampen interest in the value of the stock, or rather may have affected, or definitely has affected the value of the stock, like our admission that we are losing roughly 30 to 4 million pesos a day by not operating. We still believe that transparency is best, and we would like to do the right thing here, which is to engage and to inform the public of what's actually happening and not to hide. The normal reaction, especially from lawyers, and I am a lawyer myself, and I read an article, I think, in the International Herald Tribune, if I'm not mistaken, or the Financial Times, wherein the first thing that lawyers do in a mining incident is to make sure that they practically hide the incident. But not in this case. We wanted to engage right away.
Thank you. Yes, Mr. Lane.
Thank you, Leo. Leo, this is really addressed to you. Speaking here and listening here, we're all singing to the choir. I think everybody in the room is convinced or has been converted to the value of responsible mining. Have we tried, I think I've asked this question a long, long time ago to you or somebody else, have we tried to get the opposition here to give them the floor so they can argue their case based on information rather than ignorance? Or are they too scared to face an audience like this, a knowledgeable audience?
I think that, Kevin, you want to answer that question, but I'll say something after you. Go ahead.
Thanks, Brian. The Mining Luncheon is an open forum, platform, for anybody who wishes to attend. Leo will announce our next speaker shortly, and the topic is about responsible mining. So if anybody would like to invite any of these non-mining people, anti-mining people, they're more than welcome, as long as they respect everybody in the room and
Pay for lunch.
pay for lunch. There's a good. Thank you. Thank you.
I won't add to that. I think it's clear. And any other questions? Yes.
Good afternoon, Attorney. I'm Charlie Ang of Tiger Machinery. My interesting question is, do you have a target date for Philex to go back to operation?
Well, of course, we'd like to operate as soon as possible, but our disclosures show that we're looking at something like perhaps a conservative of 6 months and perhaps about 12 months. Hopefully, it can be shorter than that. We've already started, of course, tailing span 4 and perhaps 5, but what we are focusing now, our priority is, of course, to remediate, rehabilitate the tailing span 3, and if that is totally condemned, then we proceed immediately with 4 and 5. We would like to operate, of course, as soon as we can.
It sounds to me like it's a buy. It is a buy. Anyway, hold on and add to your shares. Okay. Yes, Ambassador Albert.
Just a rejoinder to Brian. I didn't know you were here. Were you, Brian? About inviting other sectors of society in this dialogue. Precisely, we have that Diwata group. When we had our dialogue with the women, indigenous women from Mindanao, we specifically targeted NGOs that had anti-mining sentiments. And we also succeeded to invite the chairman of the NCIP. I talked to her and I said, of course, the National Commission on Indigenous People. And I said to her, please come and listen because this will be a good balance to what you have been hearing from the other side. And indeed she came, and she came with other anti-mining ladies. Anyway, for the future meeting that we're having in Baguio, we're organizing a dialogue at the University of Baguio, where we have invited 2,000 students. Many of them are anti-mining, but many of them are also children of the mining companies. And so there will be quite, I think, an interesting dialogue. And as Mike said, we should target the younger people. Sometimes it's impossible to talk to people who have made up their minds. So we're opening this possibility in Baguio on November 15, where we have also invited the Foreign Minister of South Africa to convey to the public what mining has done to the economy and to the people of South Africa. And she has agreed to come. And we're using the women's card to improve the dialogue between these different groups. And I hope when you come for PUMSEA, you could attend the meeting. We have 2 meetings in Baguio. One is meeting with the local officials of the Bliss area. The Bliss is the Cordillera, Baguio, La Trinidad, Itogon, Suyok, Tuba, and Tublay. And they're all coming to sit down and talk to people who